Tiffany, Lucey.
Nick, Lucy.
Welcome to the Kudzu Project podcast.
Thank you.
I'm interviewing my wife today.
Some people would say that's a sketchy.
Yeah, some people would say it's cheesy, but you know what? Why not? This is my podcast. I can have whomever I want on the show.
Yes, you can.
And I wanted my wife. I might not have had you on the show, but you do have a relevance to Henderson County and this area. And that's why I wanted to bring you on. I know you are going to push back against this, but you've become somewhat of a celebrity here in Henderson County.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. You are the social media coordinator for Henderson County, North Carolina. It's a county of about 125,000, located roughly between Asheville, North Carolina and Greenville, South Carolina. It is the center of the North Carolina apple industry. Also, a large number of large industries are based here. It's a very popular retirement area, big agricultural area, big manufacturing area, big tourism area. So it's a very diverse county. And your office is located in the historic courthouse on Main Street in Hendersonville, North Carolina. You started in May of 2025 in your current role at the county. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
As you said, I'm the social media coordinator. And as such, my job is to highlight all the wonderful things that go on in Henderson County, things that the county does for the community, for the constituents. Highlight the people that work at the county because we have so many amazing people. And I don't think that maybe the community doesn't know about the wonderful things that they do. So I take it very seriously that I want to showcase not just, as you said, how great the county is and all the things that, you know, Henderson County does and is, but the people that are here.
Yeah. Your role didn't exist a decade ago, 5 years ago. Social media coordinator for a county, for a government entity, that just didn't exist long ago. This is a new thing. Do you believe that it's emblematic of the way people are consuming information in our society today?
Oh, absolutely. When people want to know information, they now go to social media to search versus even Google, especially kind of the younger, I say younger, under 40 crowd is going to go to social media looking for something, especially something local or a place that they're going to visit. And that's where they're going to get their information, their news, what they're going to do, where they're going to eat, information about that location. And so if you're not on social media, you're missing out. You're missing a huge aspect of the population and, well, you're just not going to be relevant, unfortunately.
Do you think the old way of communicating with the public is dead, or do you think this is just a supplement to that way?
I don't think it's dead. I think it is very much alive in a certain demographic. And if you only want to hit that demographic, then yeah, just keep on with the ways you've always done it. And if you want to hit a larger area of the population or a different demographic, you're going to have to expand that.
Yeah. Now, I say you're somewhat of a local celebrity because you appear in a lot of these reels, right? These Instagram reels, Facebook stories. What is your background in social media? Why do you think you were selected by the county to do their social media?
Let's see, back in 2018, I decided to start a marketing company. And that stemmed originally from doing my marketing for my own businesses for 20 something years prior, the last 20 years before that. And I would say when I started my business, I called it Plus 5 Consulting because it was after my 5 children and then me. And I started that specifically with a bent towards social media because it was really starting to take off. And it wasn't just you're trying to find your friends from the past or someone you went to high school with or college. It became a place where businesses were gaining clients and customers. And so I wanted to really capitalize on that and learn how to do that for a business. So I started that in 2018 and it's grown exponentially since then, obviously. And I think my knowledge of the algorithm for social media, again, just from learning, teaching myself, reading about it, just a lot of self-education because algorithm changes so much. I think that had played a part in the county hiring me because they wanted to get the word out to more people. And it's not just I mean, it is. It's a focus on the county and the people there, but it's also if you have reached the people in your community and something bad happens, say Hurricane Helene, you're going to be able to communicate with those people. Whereas before social media really became strong in this county, a very small amount of information got to a very small amount of people. And so part of the goal is not just to build a relationship between the community and the county, but to establish that for when there is something that happens. And we do want to help keep people safe and give them information and tell them where to go and how to get food and safety things.
Yeah. Cable news is pretty much dead. People go to YouTube to get their news by and large. People go to social media platforms oftentimes instead of going to websites because they know that it's much easier to update your Facebook page than it is to update your website.
Absolutely.
And so if you really want the latest information, you go to social media oftentimes. What do you tell the people that say, oh, social media, it's just for kids. It isn't serious. It's not a legitimate avenue of receiving communication. What do you tell these people that poo-poo social media?
Just look at the numbers. If you Google how many people are on social media worldwide or even just stateside and how many hours a day they're on social media, it is in the many, many, many millions on every day. And the average person, and this is not just me making this up, this is on Google, which can be accurate, but the average person spends between 1.5 and 2.5 hours a day on social media. And so if you are not on social, meaning your business or your municipality, you are missing out. You're leaving money on the table as a business, or as a municipality, you're not serving your constituents because they're not getting the information. Because like you said, it's a whole lot more laborious to update a website and have somebody, you send it to your web guy and it takes him a week to get it on the website, whereas social media can be instant and you can communicate instantly with anyone.
And when you say online, you're primarily talking about your mobile device, aren't you? I mean, you're not talking about people sitting in front of their desktop computer. So that also influences the way that they consume information. It's short sound bites. It's short attention span theater. It's like a ferret on a double espresso. There's very little attention span there. So you have to grab them and you have to make them pay attention, right? Yes.
You got about 3 seconds is what, the average says. The algorithm says you have 3 seconds or a little bit less actually to get someone's attention. I call it thumb stopping because you scroll, usually with your thumb, and you want people to stop scrolling and watch whatever you're putting out there. So you have to make it interesting, fun. Yes. Short attention span, funny, engaging, catchy in less than 3 seconds, or they're not going to watch.
And you were just selected to be a speaker at NC3C, which is a statewide conference for city and county government communicators.
Yes, and PIOs.
So it sounds like a rather prestigious honor.
Well, thank you. I'm excited. I really like teaching people who want to communicate in this area, teaching them how to do it and how to do it effectively so they don't feel like they're wasting their time and they are doing a good job. And so I'm very privileged, I feel like, to be able to speak.
Yeah. And you've been teaching a number of social media seminars in your work at the Lucey Agency with me.
Yes.
We moved here 2.5 years ago from Colorado to be closer to family. And loudest studio in Hendersonville. As I mentioned, now you get to hear it in person.
Oh, yes.
So we moved here 2.5 years ago from Colorado, hung our shingle, the Lucey Agency, sight unseen. We kind of didn't know what we were getting into, did we?
We did not. Well, we did. I mean, we did this in Colorado for many, many years.
Yeah.
It was just, we didn't know what we were getting into in regards to, the South is very different. And
how's it different?
I think the mindset is different of people. It's harder to be accepted into kind of the inner workings around here because we're not from around here. We didn't go to high school here. And that's...
We don't have the secret handshake from our high school.
We don't.
Here in Hendersonville.
Although it's funny, if you get people one-on-one, they say, we need somebody here who has a different view and a different perspective than everyone who's always been here.
Yeah.
And so I know that that is a needed thing, and it's liked and it's well received. It has taken a while, and that's fine.
Do you think that gives you a unique perspective when it comes to your job, that you're not just, you can see beyond the regional borders and
I think that is a huge asset that I have is having come from a completely different part of the country and seen different things and be able to integrate what works and say, okay, maybe this doesn't work over here. Let's try something new.
So touching on, you mentioned you're from the South.
I am.
You were born in Texas.
Yes.
You grew up in Texas and Georgia.
North Georgia.
I moved to Colorado from Georgia. You moved to Colorado from Georgia. I had to move to Colorado to meet a good Georgia girl, as I always say on my podcast. Yes. You're blushing. To the people out there listening, she's blushing. So you grew up in Lufkin, Texas, which is East Texas.
Yes.
What are your earliest memories of Lufkin, Texas?
Of Lufkin?
I read somewhere that it was rated one of the most redneck towns in Texas.
I will say
concur?
This. Yeah, I would. When I watch my old home videos that my parents took when I was a child, I definitely talked like a redneck. I mean, the twang, the whole thing. And I don't talk as much like that anymore, I think, just from being in Colorado for so long. But I did keep the y'all, because y'all is all encompassing.
Well, y'all saves you a syllable. Yes. So I think that's very efficient. You don't sound like a country girl. You sound like a city girl, to be honest with you.
Well, and that's what I mean. I think that kind of stems from being in Colorado for almost 20 years.
Yeah. And then you moved to Georgia when you were 13, 12, 13?
11 or 12. Yeah.
Okay. I should have done my research on you before I had you on the show.
You should know me better.
Yeah, I should know you better. And then you grew up in North Georgia in the Atlanta area.
Yes.
You had kind of an interesting upbringing.
I did. I didn't realize I had an interesting upbringing until I was a grown woman, married with children, honestly, that I started going, wait a second.
And not married to me.
No, I was married previously. But I didn't realize not everyone was raised that way.
Yeah.
Which sounds ridiculous, but it's true.
How were you raised?
I was raised in a very religious home, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it crossed over to something not good in that my family was involved with what is now widely known as a cult. And, that definitely left its mark in the sense of the way that I think and the way that I view the world and the things that have happened to me, and trying to change the way that I think in regards to many things and not base it on something that I was told by somebody else my whole life.
So it had an existential impact on your life. What is the name of the cult so we can all look it up on Wikipedia?
Well, when I was in it, it had two names, IBLP, which was the Institute in Basic Life Principles. That's how it started. It was started by a guy named Bill Gothard, and he taught these conferences. They were usually like a week long. You go every evening and then all day Saturday. And he taught them all throughout the United States, eventually the world. And it was for parents and families who wanted to raise their kids, quote unquote, in a godly way. And I think the motive for a lot of the people that went to these conferences, the motive was pure, as was with my parents. I think their motive was pure. He eventually in the 80s, my parents got involved in 1971 with IBLP. That was their first conference they went to. I was born in the late 70s. In the mid to late 80s, Bill Gothard started a homeschool curriculum of sorts. And that is where I think the cult really took off, because it went from being, you go for a week once a year to this conference and you learn all these things that God says, and I say that in air quotations. It went from that to it being completely infiltrated into your life through every subject in your school, everything you did in your home, from what you ate to what you watched or didn't watch, because they did not they frowned upon TV. So, most families didn't have a TV, to what you wore and what you listened to and the people that you spoke with. I mean, it became a part of every single thing that you did. I mean, down to wearing sunglasses, that was frowned upon because God made our eyes to squint if you're in the sun. And if you wear sunglasses, it allows the bad rays from the sun into your eyes. Like it was, I mean, there are things like that. It was literally every little thing in your life. And
you said what God says in air quotes, because you're saying that this guy who was in charge of this cult basically used religion to dictate whatever it is that he wanted from his followers. It was a cult of personality, right?
As many cults are.
Yeah.
It's built around a person. And here's what is, maybe scary is too strong of a word, but it is a little scary. Here's what's scary about these cults is they take a verse from the Bible, which I do believe in God. I believe in the Bible. They take a verse and they use it to say whatever they wanted to say. And so they twist it, or they put an extra meaning in there, and then they preach it to their people as gospel truth, as this is what God is saying. And, these people who, and I would include myself in this for the majority of my life, actually, you hear this and you go, oh, wow, this person who's closer to God than I am is saying, this is what God is saying. So I need to listen and I need to do this because I want God to be pleased with me and I want to do the right thing. And, that's a whole nother issue of the idea of earning God's love and earning salvation and earning your place in heaven. And so that's a whole nother aspect of this cult. But the front facing aspect is, you've got this guy saying, don't wear sunglasses. And here's why. God made your eye this way. And so basically, you shouldn't do that. Or it's a sin for you to do this or that or whatever, like listen to music with a rock beat, or, there was no dating. There was only courtship. The parents picked out the spouse for their children. Women didn't go to college. Why would we need to go to college? Our job was to get married and have many, many, many children. And I mean, there's so many things that went along with that. Again, it was just every part of life. And it kind of goes from the list of rules to, why are you obeying the list of rules? Because you feel like this is what God wants you to do, and God won't be happy with you unless you do it. And that, to me, is the heart of the issue that is so wrong and so scary, because even the Bible says there will be so many people, there'll be people who stand before God and say, Lord, Lord, I cast out demons in your name. I healed the sick, meaning they did all these good things. And God says, depart from me. I never knew you. And it was because their hearts weren't his. And they did the list, but their heart wasn't his. And that, to me, is the scariest thing, even beyond the behavior modification aspect.
Yeah. It's like they weaponized religion.
Yes, for their own good, as a lot of cult leaders do. I mean, Bill Gothard was a very wealthy man, never married, never had children, but certainly knew exactly how to have a good marriage and raise children.
And isn't in jail.
No, he
yet.
is. They have so many lawsuits and have for well over a decade, actually probably closer to 2 decades, many lawsuits that are just continually ongoing. His lawyers, which work in the Institute in Basic Life Principles in ATIA. So his lawyers are in-house. They're really good at kind of stretching out the whole legal process. They've moved from state to state to get under different jurisdictions.
But you can only be good for so long. I mean, the time is going to run out on these people eventually. You knew people that were actually victimized.
I do. I know a lot of people who were involved with these lawsuits who were, firstly, they were sexually molested. They were raped. They were abused. A lot of women, actually, by Bill Gothard and some of the people who were at his different locations. So they had the headquarters location, and then they had a location in Indianapolis. They had some in Texas. They had some all over the states, and then all over the world, many other countries. And so when you turn about 14, you you can be invited to go to one of these locations and quote unquote serve. Now, serve could mean anything from working in their factory, making their homeschool curriculum. It could be answering the phones. It could be going out into the neighborhoods and bringing people in to come hear the word of God, which you think, oh, that's a good thing, right? So at 14 and older, you're allowed to go work in these different locations. You're also at that point allowed to participate in, like I went to, it was a 3-month long, I don't want to say conference because you lived there, school of sorts about how to be a Proverbs 31 woman. You know, Proverbs 31 is the chapter in the Bible that talks about a godly wife and mom. And again, as somebody who loves God, you want to learn those things because you want to do the right thing. And so I was in actually the very first Excel class that they ever did. For guys, they went to one called Alert, and it was very military-esque. It was very much like being in the military. And they would deploy to different parts of the world if there was a flood or a fire or a hurricane or whatever, and they would help the people there. So again, on the outside, it seems like such a great idea. Oh, this girl is going to become a wonderful mother and make bread and have 17 children, and this guy is going to be able to rescue everyone around him. It sounds like a good thing, but the evil that lurked beneath it, well, it's now being found out, and it's finally being shouted from the rooftops, as the Bible says, that your secret sins will be shouted from the rooftops, and that's what's happening.
It sounds like a system that was developed to benefit a small group of people and not all the people involved.
Yes. Looking back now and having been to so many places with all the bigwigs there, I would say number one, it was power and, well, honestly, power, money, and sex, I would think, to me, is how it benefited the people at the top. And, you know, I had some very direct experiences with Bill Gothard in particular, as well as some of the other people there. And I do feel that I was protected. I don't know why I was and other people weren't. And that hurts me. I think I do attribute a lot of that to my father. You know, my parents weren't perfect. No parents are. But I know that they did this cult. They did it because they thought it was the best thing they could do for me and my brother. And my dad was such an honest man. And the way that he lived his life, he really did try very hard to live above reproach because he did love God and he did want to please the Lord. And so I saw that my whole life. And so when I was put in situations with Bill Gothard and with other people at these locations that were supposed to be safe, and let me preface this story by saying I was very innocent. I knew nothing about anything. When I was put in these situations, I didn't know what was wrong with them because I didn't have that knowledge, but I knew something was wrong. And the way I knew that is because I thought my dad would never do what this man is doing. And if my dad wouldn't do it, this is wrong and I need to get out of here. And so I attribute part of being kept safe from the most horrible things was my dad and the kind of man that he was.
He was a good man.
He was a good man.
Yeah. You frequently run into people out in public who you seem to be able to identify as people that have been through this with you. How do you tell those people? Because that's happened a couple of times where you can tell when people are homeschooled. You can tell when people were in this particular sect. What is the identifier to you?
You know, I don't know that I can really put my finger on it other than to say, like, you're military. You can start talking to someone and you just are in your brain, oh, well, this person, this man or woman has been in the military without ever really knowing anything about them. And it's that same kind of, I hate the word, but vibe. Yeah. And it's I guess a cross between an innocence and the things, maybe little nuances that I pick up in the things that they say. Sometimes it's the clothes they wear because I remember all the rules. And if someone is still adhering to those rules, you can tell by looking at them. You can tell a lot of times by the way they talk to other people, almost like a naive I don't know how to explain it, but you just kind of know. And sometimes I'll drop a little question here or there and say something that is like, oh yeah.
So it's a naivete that it's palpable. You can sense it, and because you were in that position. We watched a documentary a couple of years back on Netflix called Shiny Happy People. Yeah. You had a visceral reaction to that documentary. We had to stop it on several occasions because it was the emotions were so strong for you, and bringing that all back. How have you been able to preserve your faith through this? Because a lot of people would probably go the complete opposite direction and live a life completely devoid of religion and faith and God. What made you hold the line with religion after all of this?
That's a good question. And you and other people we have discussed this before, because I would say the majority of the people that I knew back in those days, and even a lot of people when I was involved in cult-like churches, even after I was grown and married with children, many of those people have left not just the church or the cult, but religion altogether and gone the complete opposite way. And I can only speak for myself. I have a relationship with God that is me and God. And yes, you hear things from preachers, you hear things from other people, from books that you've read, from sermons you listen to, commentaries you read, and all of that plays into your view of God and your relationship with God. I, for some reason, have been able to parse out my relationship with God as separate than the things that were happening around me or the things done to me or the things said to me, and realizing we're all human. This person who did this terrible thing is human. That person isn't reflecting God. So why would I hold that against God, that thing happened to me or to a friend of mine or somebody that I know? So my relationship with God is me and God. And even though these things happen to me in the name of God, I knew that wasn't God. That isn't him, because God loves me. I'm his child. And as a mother, the feeling I have towards my children is I would do anything for them. And I know God has that same feeling towards me. I'm his child. He will do anything for me. And I don't let the bad things that other people did reflect on my relationship with God that I have. Yeah. Because I know he's real. And I know that he loves me and he has saved me. And yes, bad things happen. But again, I don't put that in the category of God did this to me. A human did that, not God.
My dad used to say, when I would complain about religion and the hypocrisy that I saw in religion, the people who claimed to be godly and were bad people, the hypocrisy. And he warned me not to consider the human element of religion, because the human element is what always taints religion. Do you feel that?
I think in many regards, yes. At the same time, I feel like there are many people we can learn from who are close to the Lord, who do live good, holy lives that are pleasing to God. But it is our responsibility, I feel, speaking for myself, it is my responsibility to discern between this person telling me God wants this in my life and this person over here, or this book or whatever saying God wants this. And being discerning about that means I have to know what scripture says. I have to know, wait, that verse, I know that you're saying this verse and that you're saying this is what God wants. However, the rest of the Bible talks about this over here. So you can't just pull one verse and say that. I feel like we do have a responsibility to not just blindly go, oh, wow, well, this person is following God, so we need to listen to him or her. And so, yes, the human element of religion can be bad, but it can be good. And ultimately, it is our job to protect our hearts and minds.
Was this cult upbringing directly responsible for you getting married at an early age and having many children?
Oh, absolutely. I don't regret I have 5 sons. They are the light of my entire life and my heart, and 1 grandbaby girl. I don't regret that. However, being in this cult and being the way that I was raised directly affected my life in a very negative way and did not prepare me for being in the world. And I don't think I think that's a disservice to the people who, went through this program and other types of cults. Because then, when something happens and you need to be able to respond to it or make decisions about it or really view it as it really is, you don't have the knowledge necessary to do that. And so, yes, I was married very young. Part of that was I so desperately wanted to get away from the cult. They had invited me to go to Russia. And I did not want to go to Russia for many reasons.
Your dad probably wasn't a big fan of Russia.
No. Although he wanted me to go, it was so prestigious, right? To have Bill Gothard call, your dad and say, I want your daughter to come to Russia.
You look good in a fur hat, by the way.
I always wanted one. That'd be fun.
Well, we can get you one.
Oh, okay, thank you. So yes, it was a prestigious thing. I did not care. In fact, the first time I was invited to Russia, I had been staying for several weeks in Indianapolis, working at their training center there, going out into the literal ghettos of Indianapolis, me and one other girl, to try and get people to come listen to a sermon. And very dangerous. But one night, I don't know, it must have been close to midnight, I get a knock on the door, and it's in this hotel that they've renovated. So you have a roommate, another girl. So we got up, we were asleep, got up, and there was a girl there who said, Mr. Gothard wants to see Tiffany White. And of course I thought, oh dear, I've gotten in trouble, because I tended to get into trouble there because
For what, Tiffany?
I voiced my mind. And, just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. So I thought I was in trouble, but I wasn't. Mr. Gothard wanted to talk to me about going to Russia. And I guess at midnight, alone in his office is when, he thought that was the appropriate time. That was one of those times where I was like, my dad would never do this. This is not okay.
He doesn't pass the stink test.
No. And needless to say, after a few minutes in there alone with him, I got up and left because I knew something was wrong. But that was the first time. And I told him right then, I'm not going to Russia. And he said, well, we'll see about that. I'll call and ask your father. And I said, go ahead. Because I knew that my dad, I knew he wanted me to go. I knew that it was prestigious, but I also knew that if I was very much, Dad, I do not want to go. I was pretty confident, not 100%, I was pretty confident that he would not make me go. And I appreciated that my dad didn't, because when he got the call and Mr. Gothard said, I want me to come to Russia, he said, I just don't think that that's right for Tiffany right now. So that went well. Okay. All that to say, it kept happening. And I wanted out of the cult. I was 17 at the time. I really wanted to go to college. I actually got a scholarship to go to Liberty University. College was frowned upon greatly. In fact, it wasn't just frowned upon. You weren't allowed to go to college if you were a woman in the cult. They had their own trainings you could do, but you were not allowed to go to college. And my parents, I think I was loud enough about it and forceful enough that they were considering it, even though it was not what they wanted for me. Honestly, marriage was a way out. It was a way out of having to be under the roof of my mom and dad who wanted me to go in this certain direction and be able to go in the direction I wanted to, I thought.
So you were in this cult, but you weren't quite in that hypnotic spell where you would just do whatever they told you. You knew better, and you still had those fight or flight instincts.
Yes.
That made you say, this is not appropriate. This is not right. And there's something askew about the situation. Yeah. That was great that you were able to preserve that clarity.
Yes. I had also talked to enough people while at these different places that I would be sent to who had gone to, all of the places around the world with the cult and worked, quote unquote, there and heard their stories and heard horrible things. And I just wasn't interested. I didn't want to wear, you have to wear blue and white, blue skirt, white shirt, and
covering up everything.
Oh yes. No collarbone. I got in trouble once for my collarbone was showing in a shirt I had on.
You do have a very nice looking collarbone, by the way.
Thank you.
This isn't how my normal podcast interviews go.
I should hope not. I didn't want to wear blue and white, and I didn't want to do all the things that they wanted on top of hearing the stories about the bad things that did happen. And so, yeah, I pushed back really, really hard. And I'm sure I gave my parents a lot of gray hair in the meantime by being so forceful and loud about it.
And so settling down, having a bunch of kids was your escape path out of this cult.
It was part of it.
I know it's difficult.
Well, I don't want to cause undue pain.
Yeah.
I'd rather hold that myself than release it and it hurt somebody else. Yeah. I did want to get married. I wanted to be a wife and a mom. I did want to go to college. I did want to be in the medical field, but I also wanted to be a wife and a mom. So getting married to me, yes, got me away from the cult, but it wasn't all bad in the sense of I was very happy to start that part of my life. I desperately wanted to have children. I wanted to have 5. I have been telling people since I was a small child, I want 5 kids. The cult doesn't believe in any sort of birth control. So 5 really isn't a big family in the cult. It is, in the world at large, but at least in the United States. So that was just something I did always want. And so when I did get married, I threw myself 150% into being, as much as I could, the best wife and the best mom that I could possibly be. And it was a constant, I read books, I talked to people, I went to all kinds of lectures and conferences and met with older women who had families. And I was on a constant quest to do the best that I could as a wife and as a mom. And in that regard, my motives are pure. I know I did many things wrong as a wife and a mom. And I know my children would definitely agree with that. But kind of the same with my mom and dad. They did a lot of things wrong that definitely negatively affected my life. But I 100% forgive them. I know their hearts and their motives were pure. They did those things thinking it was best, not because they were trying to get power and control, but because they loved me. And I hope that my kids can see my flaws and see the same thing, that I did a lot of things wrong, but my heart was always with them and to help their lives be better than mine. I think that every parent wants their kids' lives to be better than theirs.
Well, knowing what I know about you as a mother, I know that whatever it was, it came from a place of love and care and a desire to give your sons what's best for them.
Absolutely. And I still feel that way. And, I miss having the chaos of 5 boys and all their Legos and army men and swords and guns and games all around the house. I miss all of that. I loved it. That was the absolute highlight of my life. And in that regard, I would not change a thing. I would change things maybe that I did as a mom, but, having those 5 boys has been, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah. So when did you see the light? What was there a moment when you were like, okay, this is not working for me and I need to change something in my life?
No, I didn't have that moment. It was a very slow progression over several years where I started questioning the specifics. Again, I wasn't questioning God, his love for me, right? My relationship with him. I was questioning the peripheral items that came along with being a part of a church that is very culty, for lack of a better word. And I would start questioning these things and saying, and you're not supposed to in the cult or in my part of Christianity, you're not really supposed to use the word feel, because feelings change. This is the mindset. However, God gave us feelings for a reason and emotions. And yes, you can let them rule your life, but you can also bring them into control and utilize them to help your life. And so there were moments where I said, I feel like this is wrong. I may not be able to put my finger on it. I may not be able to point to a verse in the Bible and say, this is why this is wrong. But I have this gut feeling, this instinct that this particular thing is wrong. So I would have these things happen. And the only outlet I had in the life that I lived in and created was to go to my husband at the time or go to my pastor and the elders of the church. That was the only avenues that you have for if you have questions about things of that nature and religion and God and family and, all that kind of stuff. And so I would do that. I would go to my husband at the time and I would go to the pastor and I would go to the elders and say, hey, I don't think this is right anymore. I don't feel like I can live this way. And a lot of it started with things having to do with being a wife and mom and things I had always been taught that I was like, this isn't right. It's not right. I don't know. And I was rebuffed and I was told no, because obviously the church teaches very specific, our church at the time taught very specific things about these subjects. And so then I just eventually started slowly doing these things or not doing these things. And my husband at the time would get very upset because that's what we do. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And he also got upset because I would say, hey, I don't think you should do these things either. So it was a progression over a long period of time where I was consistently the bad person for wanting to stop doing. The one thing that comes to my mind, if you want an example, and, it's a controversial subject, but spanking. And right now, looking back, I have so many different feelings on spanking children, and that's a whole nother subject. But I had one particular child of mine. I have 5 boys, and one of them did not respond to spanking. His temperament and personality did not respond to it in the sense of, most kids, you get behavior modification. You spank them, they go, oh, I don't like that, and they don't do it again. This one child, it affected him emotionally. It affected my relationship with him. It affected everything. And over a course of time, I thought, I need to stop spanking him. This is wrong for me to spank him. And I started telling my husband at the time, and he got mad and he went and told the elders of the church that his wife is not obeying and not spanking. And I stood up to them and I said, I'm sorry, I cannot. I've prayed about this. I know what the Bible says about it. I know what you teach about it. I know what all the books say. But as a mother, God gave me these instincts and feelings, and I can't do this anymore. And I quit spanking and eventually quit spanking all of the boys and I'll be honest, after I'm sure inflicting a lot of emotional and psychological abuse on my children for spanking them in the way that I was told to spank them. I view that as one of my largest mistakes. Again, I digress. That's a whole nother subject. But as an example, the spanking, I stopped spanking. And that was one of the items. And then there was another item. And I would go to my husband at the time. I would go to the pastor and the elders and they would say, no. And I would think, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And it just was a slow progression over a period of time. And I feel like, for lack of a better term, my eyes were open to, just because somebody who you think is a godly person in your life is saying do this, it doesn't mean that that is what God wants for you and your family. And that's okay. So I slowly started stepping away in different areas, in different beliefs, in different practices. And and maybe we want to get into this or not. It's up to you as the podcast boss. But the number one thing that really made me hard stop going to the culty church, listening to the people that I had been listening to and all that was ultimately the divorce between my husband and I after 21 years and 5 children. And that, if there was a light bulb moment, that was it. Over, several years prior to that, kind of leading up to that thing happening. And that was probably, I guess, the moment where I was like, boom, no more.
That must have taken a great deal of strength to stand up for yourself and to do what you needed to do to preserve yourself.
It was terrifying.
You wouldn't have done your sons any good had you been driven into the ground. I mean, you had to save yourself too, right? That's why they make you put on your oxygen mask first in the airplane before you put on an oxygen mask for others. You would do your sons no good if you weren't around. And so you had to stay. It sounds to me like you were cudgeled by that religion, like those very words that you had to live by. Certain people use those words to build themselves up, to knock you down, to get what they wanted from you.
Absolutely. And it was terrifying.
And that's pure evil, in my opinion.
It was very evil. Very. And again, hindsight's 2020. And you think, oh, wow, so many years even before this happened, this other thing happened. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I realize it? But, you can do that. Everyone can do that about something in their life. And things happen when they should and for a reason, whether we know that reason or not. Yeah, you said I was a very strong person. I did not realize how strong that I was. Brave, because I was absolutely terrified. But I knew, like you said, what I had to do to preserve me in order to preserve my children. And, looking back, I would do a lot of things differently, of course. But ultimately, I know my heart during all that time. And my heart was, number one, my boys, their lives, who's influencing them, the things that they're seeing and they're hearing. And then number two was I had lost my health. I was in full adrenal failure. I had ulcers. I had a lot of health issues. I was going to a cardiologist because, in my mid 30s, I'm having heart problems. And, I ate very healthy. I'd always been healthy, never drank alcohol, didn't smoke. I mean, I did all the quote unquote right things, exercised, but I had all these health issues. And it was the stress of living under this weight that I didn't realize that that's what it was. You don't know sometimes until you're out from under it.
How about your mental health?
Oh, well, yeah. Again, in the belief system that we're in, you don't really talk about that because if you have those kind of issues, that's because of sin in your life. I say sarcastically, but that was the belief. Yeah. And I would, just rack my brain praying, God, show me the sin in my life. Why am I struggling with this mental aspect, this depression, this anxiety, just constant? And come to find out, not that those things were very real and they did exist, but it wasn't because of an overt sin in my life. And might as well say it now, I'm writing a book. I am writing my story. I'm incorporating other women's and men's story, in particular with coming out of religious organizations and churches where things have gone on in their life or they're going through a divorce or bad things have happened and how the church responds. And part of that is, the mental health that we're supposed to sweep under the rug and we're not supposed to talk about. And it is your sin. That's why you're feeling depressed, Tiffany. And it is, because you're not being obedient to your husband. That's why you have this anxiety. And I want to shine the light on, no. Actually, sometimes you are anxious because you have 5 children and you don't have food because your husband got fired again. And you don't know what you're going to feed your kids for dinner or breakfast or lunch. Or, your house is being foreclosed because you don't have the money to make the house payment. Or, there's a whole litany of things. Maybe that's why you're anxious. Maybe that's what should be the focus instead of, you have a sin or you're not obeying your husband. And I think that's wrong. And I think that personally, I want other people who are still in that situation, and I know people who are still there, to hear stories and hear truth and hear, what? God did not create you to live this kind of life. God created you to live a full and abundant life. God loves you. You're his child. He does not want this for you. He does not want you to live abused, neglected, controlled. That is not his goal, God's goal for you. And this is a little extra, I would say extra biblical. It's not biblical at all, but you actually taught me this when we first met. And you're looking at me with frightened eyes. If you don't like your situation, Tiffany, you are the only person who can change it. And that is completely against what we are taught, in the cult and in the church and whatever. You should be content in your situation no matter what. Well, sometimes no. Sometimes being content and living in an abusive situation is wrong. And it's exposing your children to that as well. And it's okay to get out of it. And if you're going to get out of it, you're the one that has to get you out of it. No one's going to walk in and rescue you and save you. You pick yourself up and get out of it. And whatever that means, there's many avenues to do that. And yes, other people help us. People helped me. But ultimately, I don't know how to explain or how to verbalize the idea that God loves me and wants me to live a full and abundant and a happy life. And if my life is causing extreme mental issues, physical issues, psychological issues, if it involves abuse of many kinds, if it involves neglect, that is not what God has for me. And I can change that. And I did.
Well, I'm very proud of you for getting that clarity and escaping that world. I'm sure it took a lot. I can't even imagine. And the thing that's remarkable to me through it all, you always bring up your sons and the impact that it could or does or did have on your boys. When I look at you, I see mom. Mom defines you. You are a nurturer. You are someone who your love for your boys is just unparalleled. I never had kids, as you know. Mm-hmm. I went from 0 to 5 step boys in a very short amount of time. So this is a new world for me, but it's very comfortable for you. In fact, you were so good at having kids that you had a career path that included helping others have kids. Mm-hmm. You were a midwife for many years. Mm-hmm. You taught about midwifery. You traveled and gave seminars and wrote curriculums and curriculi or whatever the plural is. Tell us a little bit about that.
Again, a journey from when I was a child, just wanting to, I was always very curious about having children, because again, that was my, that was what all I was good for. I say sarcastically, but yeah, in the cult, you get married and you have 17 children, literally. So I was always very curious about it. My mom had always told me, she had cesarean sections, and it kind of always scared me because hers were pretty traumatizing. And I never wanted that for me from a young child. So by the time I was about 16, I started reading books on midwifery and home birth and how babies are born all around the world and throughout history. And, how do we get to this modern era of everyone goes to a hospital, lays on their back in the bed, gets drugged up and has their kid, So I started very young reading about that. And I had a friend of mine named Sunshine Meadows, and she was in our little homeschool group, and her mom had a baby. Sunshine was my age. So at the time, young teenager, and her mom had a home birth. And I told my mother, I was like, that is so dangerous. I cannot believe she did that. That's just so dangerous. She could have died. Her baby could have died. And my mother, who had hospital births and cesarean sections and, did the whole medical thing, she said, well, you can't really say that until you know more about why she did that in the options. So that's when I started reading a lot of books about it. And by the time I was 16, my mom had connected me with a local midwife. I had gone to some births with her in exchange for like babysitting the kids after for a few days, kind of doing a postpartum doula kind of trade. So I got to see several home births, started studying textbooks that this midwife gave me. By the time I got married and I got pregnant with Ethan, I went to a normal male obstetrician doctor, and it was such a bad experience, those first few visits, that I thought, I really want to do this home birth thing, but it terrified me. But again, just started researching and reading and going, what, God made me to have babies. And unless something goes wrong, I'll go to the hospital. If not, why go to the hospital? So long story short, I had Ethan, my first son, at home in a birth pool in the kitchen with my mom, my best friend, my husband at the time, and 2 midwives there. And it was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. 44 hours of labor, 10-pound baby. And I was absolutely on cloud 9. Like I was Wonder Woman. I could literally take on the whole world. It was amazing. And I thought that next day, I said, I have to tell women how to do this because they're missing out if they're not able to do this. And I realize now not every woman wants that, and that's okay. But in my little, very naive mind, I thought, well, if they just had this info, they would get to experience this wonderful thing too. So that's what really put me on the path to becoming a midwife. I started apprenticing, going to correspondence courses through college, working with other midwives, working with herbalists, because I wanted to also be an herbalist along with well woman care and newborn and small children care. And so for years, that's what I did, while at the same time having my own children, eventually homeschooling them. There did come a point in my life where my husband at the time said, you have to stop. I need you here to make dinner every night. And if you're not here, then you've got to quit. And so I quit, because that's, what you're supposed to do. And I would still do births for repeat clients or close friends. I would still teach every now and then, or go teach at a conference or whatever. I wrote some curriculum that was sold nationwide, childbirth education curriculum. But it was a wonderful way that I felt like I could help other women and other families who wanted to take a different path. I could help teach them how to do that. And it was very fulfilling for the sense of allowing women to experience this wonderful, wonderful thing God gave us of having children, helping them experience it the way they wanted to, whatever that meant. So it was a wonderful time. I delivered 440 or 50 babies total births. And many, many of these moms were still friends on social media. And these kids are now in college or out of college, and many are married. And so I have like grandbaby midwife clients, meaning the babies that I caught have now caught their babies, which is really, really cool. And I look back on all that with a lot of fondness. And I was very blessed to have been able to do that.
So all I know about childbirth is what I've seen in the movies.
Oh, dear.
And they always ask people to boil water and to tear up sheets.
Yeah.
Do you have to do that?
We do boil water.
Really? What's that for?
We do not tear up sheets.
Okay.
Well, we sterilize equipment, first of all. So we sterilize it after every birth, but then we put it also in boiling water prior to, in case we need any equipment. Secondly, we do warm up in a crock pot, warm compresses for moms. So that would be maybe where the sheets were torn to use, but we make our own and special organic fabrics and all that kind of thing. But that's where the boil. It also, and maybe this is a little sexist, but there are some dads who are just so scared. And so we keep them busy so they don't get in our way or in mom's way. Because sometimes they bring the stress level up in mom just because they're stressed seeing their wife that way, which I understand. So we'll be like, hey, we really need 3 big pots of water. Can you go boil that? And these men are like, yes. And, we also use boiling water to warm up the birth pool for women having a water birth.
Okay. So it's not totally inaccurate.
No.
You've told me that the midwife world is kind of hippy dippy. The people that have home births and the people that help with home births are a little bit hippy dippy.
So I would say the people that are midwives and doulas and childbirth educators in the home birth world and herbalists are more on the hippie side. I would say that over half of our clientele were college educated, non-hippie, very normal mainstream. We had a lot of just very normal mainstream, as well as very highly educated lawyers. We had doctors, we had professors, and we used to keep records on this because people look at it as a hippy dippy, dangerous practice. And you have these incredibly educated, smart people choosing home birth over your typical hospital route. And so, there were a lot of hippies, but there were a lot of very, very non-hippie people who chose to have their babies at home.
Is that where you got you are very much into organic food, non-GMO, grass-fed beef, that whole 9 yards, cutting sugar out of your diet. Is that where you got that?
No.
Okay, where'd you get that?
That actually came from the cult originally, which, again, there are some good things even mixed in with the bad. And part of it, the bad part of it, if you eat this stuff that's in the Bible as bad, then you're a sinner. And that's obviously ridiculous. However, what taught me to eat correctly was the homeschool groups that I was a part of. And then delving into that, once I had children, it became very much a focus because I wanted my kids ultimately to have a strong immune system. Because I figured if they have a strong immune system, their whole lives, they can fight off diseases and viruses and illnesses and be healthy. So that's where that originated, was wanting to give my kids the best possible start in life. And then it's just very interesting to me about how the body responds to what you put in it. You are what you eat is very, very true. And then with the huge, vast amounts of diabetes and heart disease and colon cancer, all kinds of cancers, all this in the United States, you wonder, where did all this happen? Why all of a sudden in the last 50 years is this going on? And ultimately, my personal opinion, it can be traced back to food. And so again, I thought in my naivete years ago that, if people knew this, they would eat right. They would want to be healthy. And so I thought it my job to tell them whether they asked or not. And again, motives are pure, heart was pure, but the actual implementation, I think, offended a lot of people.
So the proselytizing came in handy from the cult.
Yeah, because I would preach about not only God, but homeschooling, home birthing, and eating healthy. Yeah, to anyone who would listen.
Well, you sounded like a broken record to me in the beginning. And
well, thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm getting to a compliment eventually. You made me very aware about the food that I was putting in my body. And as you know, you got a lot of pushback from me in the beginning, but you have opened my eyes to the crap that is in most of the foods that we eat today as a society. And I was eating terribly. And
you weren't even eating that bad, comparatively speaking, to your normal average American.
Right.
In fact, you weren't eating that bad at all, quote unquote, in regards to your normal American. But what we were eating or did eat was very bad. Yeah. And you look at the sugar content. You look at the level that it's processed to. You look at the seed oils or whatever kind of oils are in there, and you look at the origin of the food. Beef from a meat lot reacts completely differently in your body than beef from a grass-fed cow. Grass-fed as in, that's how God made them. He made them to go eat a whole bunch of grass all day long versus a synthetic food that has GMOs or is made by GMOs and doesn't contain the same things. And it causes the fat marbleization in the meat to be different, which then causes it to be different in our bodies. And it's a whole nother subject. I'll stop right there.
Well, you certainly opened my eyes to eating better, to eating organic, to eating natural foods. And
I have a question for you, Mr. Podcaster.
Sure.
We met 9 years ago, 8.5 years ago.
Almost 9 years ago.
Almost 9 years ago. Do you feel better? And I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, you as a human, do you feel better now? Or did you feel better when you were 8.5 years younger than you are now?
I've had moments in my life where I have been at what I thought was peak health. There was a point where I weighed far less than I do now, had the stereotypical 6-pack. I was running 7 to 9 miles a day, but I was eating crap, and I was drinking heavily, among other bad things. And, so I think it was a little bit of a mirage. It was a little bit of a ruse. And so, yeah, I feel better now than I have in a long time. My left hip notwithstanding, which I'll need to get replaced in the not so distant future to match my other hip replacement on my other side.
Which was hereditary.
And I thank you for motivating me to get that done. Other than that hip, which kind of makes me walk with kind of a thug limp, Yeah, other than that, I feel great. And I feel good. I'm not winded when I climb stairs. I don't snore.
I think that's a huge outward manifestation of what's going on in your body is the lack of inflammation, because you used to snore very, very, very loudly. But it wasn't just that. You had massive sleep apnea to the point where I was very concerned. And
we were on the verge of getting a CPAP.
Yeah, I wanted you to go get one of those CPAPs because I was like, he's going to die in his sleep. He's not breathing for 30 or more seconds. And I wasn't sleeping because I was constantly hitting you to make you start breathing again. And that is gone. And like, it's been gone for a year and a half or more, 2 years since we really started eating organic. Yeah. And really the only 3 things we changed: no sugars, no seed oils, and organic as much as possible. Yeah. That's all we changed. Yeah. And you no longer snore and you no longer have sleep apnea. And that's a huge, just something you can put your finger on, not just ethereal. Oh, I feel good.
Yeah. And I no longer have heartburn. I had wicked, what they call GERD, where it feels like lava is coming up from the pits of hell into your throat. Right. And you literally think you're going to die.
It feels like a heart attack. Sleep. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't have that anymore at all. I don't have high blood pressure, which I had. I had dizzy spells because of my high blood pressure.
So I would say it's directly related to your snoring, your sleep apnea, your heartburn, directly related to the fact that we cut out 2 things and then started eating organically. And that's all we did. Yep. And we still eat really good food because we love good food.
Yeah. And I have a huge appetite. Like, I'll eat healthy food, but I eat a lot of it. It's identifying those foods that are good for me. And I'm starting to weed out those things that maybe had a little bit of the bad stuff, but I figure it wasn't enough to move the needle. But I'm getting beyond that. And I'm getting beyond any desire for any fast food whatsoever. I still have a soft spot for pizza, which I haven't satiated in a while, but.
Well, that's my next question, Mr. Podcaster. Do you feel like you're missing out because of the way that our lives have changed in the last 2 years in our diet? Are you missing out?
No, because I think we're good about having that balance where, one meal a weekend we'll do something that we wouldn't normally eat. But it's telling because after I have that meal, I don't really feel good about it. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like, ooh, that was really enjoyable. I'm so glad I did that. Now it's back to the salt mines. Mm-hmm. It's always like, I don't miss that much.
No, I feel like we go have that meal. We talk about it. We're all excited and we eat all the bad things during that meal. We get dessert and, we just do the whole thing. And then maybe an hour later we go, okay, we cannot wait to have a healthy meal next meal, or tomorrow, we've got to eat this and this. And we actually look forward to eating better because you feel it when you eat maybe not so great.
Yeah. Well, I'm really proud of you for your journey. I often tell people that you're the most wonderful woman that I've ever met, and I'm fortunate enough to be married to you.
You're very kind. Thank you.
And I think that we have a very special thing because we're best friends. Mm-hmm. And I think we love and respect one another. We thoroughly enjoy spending time with each other. It was very luxurious to have you in the office with me every day when we first moved here and started the Lucey Agency. And then since you going to the county, I do miss you. I do look across our office at the empty desk and I wish you were here. But at the same time, I'm so proud of what you've done with the county. You've raised awareness on a level that just didn't exist before. I think people have moved past the legacy forms of consuming information and content, and you are at the bleeding edge of that. And the things that have been done in the past where, it's government messaging, this is going to be sterile and info-rich, and it's going to be just the facts, ma'am. You've given it a personality and a life that is really resonating with people.
Well, thank you.
And it's so hard to go anywhere in this town without people saying, hey, I saw you on that reel about the dinosaurs in Flat Rock Park or whatever. You're like a mini celebrity here, Tiff.
Well, again, my goal is to point out all the great things the county does. And it's just a lot of fun being able to show all the people that work for the county the things that they do to help the community and have fun doing it and doing it in an interesting way. And that is my goal and what I hope to continually strive for.
Well, keep up the great work in the county and keep up the great work as my wife.
Oh, you're very sweet.
Because you're doing a wonderful job.
I have to say, a good wife, totally my opinion, and you can cut this out if you want. A good wife is a reflection of how she's treated by her man. And it is impossible to be a good wife, quote unquote, if my husband isn't cherishing me and loving me and taking care of me. And that frees me up to love you. And it's just a give and a take, and then you love me all the more and I love you all the more. And it's this great synergy of how it's supposed to be. And it starts with you and the way that you love me and the way that you treat me. And I feel valued, I feel heard, and I feel safe. And I want to thank you for that because I didn't know that existed. And life is hard. The world is hard. And everyone's like, marriage is hard and whatever. Marriage is two people. So any relationship between two people will take work. But I think what we have is we are a unit. We're a team and we attack the world and the problems together. And doing that together with your best friend makes it doable. It makes it something that you can endure because you're not alone doing it. Yeah. And I just want to say thank you. I love you.
Well, and I want to say thank you to you for you took a chance on me many times in my life where I was somewhere where I didn't need to be in my head. And I had walls. You helped me knock those walls down. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. And, it's no surprise. We're very, very different people with very different upbringings. But you believed in me. You loved me when I didn't even love myself. And I want to thank you for that. I feel like you've made me a better person. You've brought me closer to God. You have helped me understand what being a parent is. I'm a stepdad, but, is there really a difference when someone is in crisis or in need? You're going to be there to fill a role for that person, no matter what your title is. But, you've introduced me to a lot of aspects of life that I was just unaware of. And I really feel like I was just living for myself for so long, for so many years. And you made me think outside of myself. And I think that's very important in life. So I want to thank you for all you've done for me.
Oh, you're a wonderful man with a wonderful heart.
And I'm your biggest fan. I love what you're doing. Keep up the great work and just keep being an amazing wife like you are now.
Okay.
I love you, Tiffany.
I love you, Nick Lucey.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Anytime.
The Kudzu Project is made possible by the Lucey Agency, helping businesses across the South grow deep roots and stand out. Based in Hendersonville, North Carolina, this full-service marketing firm builds handcrafted websites, eye-catching logos, and social media that pops for businesses and organizations. Because if your story's worth telling, it's worth telling right. Learn more at lucyeagency.com. That's LUCEY agency.com.
Everyone has a story. And at the Kudzu Project, we want to hear yours. Go to kudzuproject.com and fill out our story submission form. You can write your story for us to read on the podcast, request to be interviewed, or even nominate someone else whose story deserves to be told. The Kudzu Project is all about capturing the voices and spirit of our community, and your story could be the next one we share. Visit kudzuproject.com and tell your story today.